Hello and welcome. It's your friendly neighborhood acupuncturist, Chris Carlo here, and I wanted to share with you some common causes of neck pain, something I often see in the clinic, and many times there are causes that are overlooked. Some of the obvious causes, like trauma, auto accidents, for example. I mean, a little more obvious, but I want to talk about some things that are not so obvious. Um, the head sitting on the neck is a very heavy object for the neck to support. So think about that as we talk about this. What comes to mind is that movie, Jerry Maguire, where they were kind of going back and forth, challenging each other. Did you know this and did you know that? And the little boy said, did you know the weight of a human head is 8 pounds? That was a cute movie. Um, but you got to think about the weight of the head on this smaller part of the body, the neck, and the strain that the neck has in carrying that weight. And the idea of you sitting and standing throughout the day, your neck is never really relaxed. It's always on. It's always busy. It's always doing something. The muscles are engaged, keeping the head in one position. When you kind of, like I said, you just standing and sitting around. Unless you're like laying down or you're in a recliner, your neck muscles are active. So repetitive movement is one thing that I'd like to point out. I think this is kind of obvious. If you're a guitar player in a head-banging rock band and you're swinging your head back and forth, yeah, you're going to have some neck problems. Be careful with that. There's not many of us that are dealing with that. I tried it once. I wouldn't recommend it. But think about any kind of repetitive motion. One time I took a ride on a winding road and I was constantly turning left and right. And at the end of about an hour of driving, my neck was bothering me. So sometimes things can affect us without us realizing it. All that kind of driving and turning, you'd think maybe that wouldn't be so challenging, but it ended up being challenging. Something else that's important is how you position your body, the ergonomics. I think there's more of an understanding about this today with so much work behind a computer. But there's also the cell phone and the idea of looking down and angling your head downward and looking at your hand holding the cell phone, and the strain that it can put on the back of the neck. Okay, muscles are kind of stretched out a little more. And when you're in any one position for too long, that's going to be a problem. That could cause pain and discomfort. So think about driving, watching TV, even in a sleeping type position. Any one position for too long, for any part of the body, could cause strain, cause discomfort. The pressure from just laying down can be blocking circulation in certain ways. So think about the sleeping position that you have, and if you have a good mattress, if you have the right pillow that supports you. Do you sleep on your side? Do you sleep on your back? When you sleep on your side, the distance between the mattress and your head may be a little different than when you sleep on your back. Okay, and also the back of your neck is like an arch, just like the arch of your foot, and it needs to be supported, particularly when you're sleeping on your back. And so do you have support there? Is your pillow kind of filling in that area when you're sleeping on your back? Sometimes we just become comatose and we fall asleep and we're in some wacky, odd sleep position and we don't realize it and we're just out for hours. But then we wake up and we're all stiff and sore because we were in a position that was actually cutting off circulation and causing tension. So it's important to be aware of that. We can't choose preventative measures if we're not aware. And that's something I wanted to point out earlier. You know, to do preventative self-care, we need to be aware of what the problem is, first of all. And that's why I want to share this info, because I see this a lot with patients. They come in with neck pain, looking for therapy like acupuncture, which can be very helpful. But oftentimes I want to figure out what they might be doing that's causing the neck pain to begin with. There's a big one here. Well, let me finish up with sleep posture. Pillow under the knees when you're laying on your back, or pillow between the knees when you're laying on your side, can help align your legs better with your hip and take pressure off of your lower back. Okay, so consider that. And the one thing I would add is I do that actually myself. And when I first started using a pillow, it was hard for me to get used to it. It bothered me. I wanted to kick it out of the way. But now I've used it for so many years, I feel lost without it. You know, I need something under my legs when I'm sleeping on my back, you know. Okay, let's talk about diet. Diet is probably one of the most unrealized causes of neck pain. You know, I always like to say good health is about good circulation. And we talk about energy in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, but also think about blood flow. And if you think about the body is like a tube. You know, you breathe through a tube, you eat through a tube, your blood flows through a tube. Every inch of space in the body, it's about flow and circulation. Even the small spaces between every cell, there's a space. Blood needs to flow through that space. So if you unravel it all, it's like a tube. And within that structure, there can be bottlenecks. And one of the biggest bottlenecks is the neck. Think about the body and the head and how much they are larger than the neck. And the neck has more circulation flowing through it to the head and the brain than, say, any individual limb. So there's a lot of circulation flowing there that's important. And when we have things that are blocking the circulation, that's going to lead to some discomfort. So inflammation, you know, when we eat foods, this can cause inflammation in the body, certain foods, okay? If you're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, it could cause a lot of inflammation in the body. That inflammation can thicken our blood and affect the blood flow, and it can show up in the back of the head, in the occipital region of the head, and in the neck area. It's just inflammation can kind of build up in these kind of little pockets in our body. Oftentimes inflammation builds up around joints. And what's the neck? Just a whole bunch of joints. Okay, and so inflammation from diet is a problem, can be a problem. It could be a source. Also, you could have food sensitivities you're not aware of. You could be eating foods and your body is literally having an immune response to it. And immune responses cause inflammation. Okay, so it would be good to get checked out for that. I do a blood test in my clinic, and it's called food inflammation testing. And we can see and identify any particular foods that you're sensitive to and having reactions to. Oftentimes people are coming in, they have migraines, they have aches and pains and other disorders, even autoimmune disorders like Hashimoto's, for example. And we discover that they have sensitivities to foods. And even though you may, sometimes you feel it in your belly, you feel bloated, you feel some digestive discomfort, but sometimes you don't feel it there, you feel it elsewhere. And it's delayed by several days, for example. Things show up later on and you don't really connect the dots to food. So it's good to do a blood test to rule out what might be going on there, particularly, you know, if you're having neck pain and you're not really sure the source of it. Another source of neck pain or just back pain in general is the shape of your spine. You know, people don't necessarily have a perfect shape to their spine. Sometimes they have conditions like scoliosis where the spine is curved in an irregular fashion. There could be some kind of excessive curving. You know, the upper back kind of arches towards the back and the lower back kind of arches more towards the front. And those arches could be excessive or they could be limiting and not so supportive. You know, that curve is like a spring in the back. And if it's more flat, like you get a flat back, you don't have so much of a spring, like a kind of a cushiony, springy type movement to your body. It's not so supportive. You can end up with some wear and tear on muscle structures, and they can become irritated and inflamed and lead to pain and discomfort. There's another condition that's not very obvious, and that's mental emotional. Your mental emotional state. Okay, that can change the shape of your posture. Um, there's a variety of different emotions, but think about how your posture may change if you're depressed and you kind of slouch, or if you're aggressive or assertive and maybe your head juts forward a little bit more so. That's creating more weight. You know, if your head is kind of in the center, positioned over your neck, your bones are going to be stacked up nicely and very supportive. But if your head is tilted or slanted or brought back more or pushed forward more at awkward angles, because of your mental emotional state, whether you're feeling anxious or sad or worried, it can change the position in the posture. And that can create a strain on muscles and lead to, you know, kind of like chronically lead to discomfort. So pay attention to that as well. So I hope you found this information helpful. I'm hoping it can help you unravel some sources of discomfort, and then that can help you uh, try to correct them with some self-care, or look for some uh, medical professional that could be more helpful in helping to alleviate the pain, the inflammation that you're experiencing in the neck. And until next time, take care and keep on the sunny side.